And then the last one that I wanted to show you is how to make one on a sewing machine. Get that serger out of here. So for this one, you're going to, let me move that again actually. You're going to have it so that the right sides are together, and this is going to be a turn and top stitched. So right sides together. And this one, since I want it to be an 8-inch washcloth, I cut it a 9-inch square so that I could have a 1/2-inch seam allowance. So for this one, I'm just going to stitch a 1/2-inch seam allowance, and I'm going to leave an opening. If you need to, you can just mark the fabric of where to stop and start your stitching so that you have an opening to turn it right side out. So again, this is just going to be with a 1/2-inch seam allowance on the sewing machine here. I'm going to start at my little mark, but just making sure I have a 1/2-inch seam allowance there. So I'm going to go ahead and take a few stitches and then back stitch. And then just going to go for it here. And I'm going to sink my needle into the corner and turn. I don't have quite enough room there. There we go. And come down the other side. Let's speed this up a little for you. And then sink the needle in again and turn again. And my edges aren't perfect, but again, I mean, this is for wiping a bum, so I'm not too concerned about perfectly straight stitching. If you were planning to sell these, you would want to do a better job, but this is for my infant who won't know. And you can see my corners aren't lining up, but again, I'm not too concerned about that. Just a minute, please. Someone at the door. Okay, and then I'm going to back stitch. Just a few stitches here, and then I'm going to cut my ends. I'll be out in a minute, honey. I'm gonna move that out of the way here. And then you'll want to trim these corners off just to make it easier to turn. You don't want to cut your stitching, but cut pretty close to it. Okay. And then we'll use this space that we left here to go ahead and turn that right side out. Okay, and then I like to use, you can see those corners here are not perfect, so I like to use a knitting needle with just a blunt end there to go ahead and poke the corners out. And make those nice and neat. Let's see, I think I've got them all. All right, so then I can just go ahead and finger press this seam closed. So there's our opening, and it wants to close straight. So I'm just going to finger press that and smooth this out and just try to really quickly straighten out these edges. And you can of course do this on an ironing board, just with an iron, if you want it to be nicer than this. But for demonstration purposes, we don't care. last side here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start stitching where the opening is, just right before the opening. And for this, I like to do a smaller seam allowance since I'm top stitching. So I like to do maybe 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a few stitches and back stitch. And then I'm just going to stitch all the way around. I'm going to go kind of quickly so this video isn't too long. I'm just picking a spot on my sewing machine, on my presser foot here, and just following that spot. I want one more stitch. So I'm just, on my machine, I'm just following along the inside of this foot here. Oop. Sometimes it just catches on the corner because there's more fabric, so I just lift and lower my presser foot, or you could use a walking foot. And again, just sink my needle in there. And this isn't quite lined up, so I'm just going to fix that really quickly. Sounds like it's time to change my needle. Really, you should be changing your needle between every project, but I've been lazy this week. A little too far there. I'm just smoothing out the edge. So you can see why I prefer to do this on the serger. This just takes a little more time, and this is one of those projects that I feel like I just want to finish it fast because, again, just washcloths. And I'm not selling them. So they don't have to be perfect. But the finish on this one looks nicer, for sure, than on the serged one. So it's just partially your preference as well. All right, so now we've got where we're just going to try and line up the stitching from where we started. A quick back stitch, and we're done. So I'm going to clip my threads here. I need a pair of smaller scissors for that, I think. And here is our third washcloth finished. So now you can see there are our 3 different kinds. You could hit this with an iron if you wanted to, but once you start washing them, they're just going to do their thing anyway. So here's our turned and top stitched, and here is our serged with a square corner and our serged with a round corner. So I hope that is a help to you if you're thinking of doing these. They're so fast, they're so easy. Flannel is so inexpensive, and so you can go to the craft store and use your 40 or 50% off coupon and just buy tons of it. And fabric.com also has just plain colored double napped flannel that you can use. You don't even have to do it if you're serging them. You can even make it a single layer if you want to, but I don't like the idea of touching poop, so I prefer a double layer. So anyway, hopefully that's a help to you, and enjoy your washcloths.